Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Daily Football Roundup proudly brings to you the best damn podcast in the world, the 12-Ounce Curl Route Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Current. You can find me on Twitter or X at Aaron Current. My co-host, Kyle, can be found there at DF Roundup. And my co-host, Corey, can be emailed somehow. I don't get in touch with him some way. I don't know. What's going on, fellas? How we doing?
Corey, you have email now?
Yeah.
At
hotmail.com.
Corey1 at hotmail.com.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, welcome to the internet. It's a magical place.
It's wild, dude.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of weird noises. Like
yeah.
Okay.
You have a color TV, or is your TV still in black and white?
Oh, I'm just like the motels, baby. I got a color TV.
Okay. Nice.
It's like a square bulb thing, but yeah, it's picture. It's like 360.
Oh, okay. Well, nice.
Fuck.
Yeah. Do you have a debit card, or do you pay everything in cash?
Cash, and I
checks.
Sweet checkbook, dude. I got my new Texans logo checks just came in. Fire.
Ooh, fancy.
I thought maybe it would be like bulldog puppies or something like that. But hey.
Well, Kyle, you and I had a pretty good week. Should we just hop right in, or?
5-1 is 5-1, and 3-3 is 3-3. I'm one game back from Corey, and I think everybody's cheering Aaron on to stay above 500, to just finish the season above 500. There's 7 games left. 7 games left. We got 4 this week, 2 in the conference championship, and then we have the Super Bowl. So for the love, Aaron, please just finish above 500.
The superb owl will be the deciding factor in this. We'll just get this party started. Saturday at 4:30, the Cleveland Browns traveled down to Houston to play Corey's beloved Houston Texans. Houston won this game 45-14. Kyle correctly chose Houston +3. Myself and Corey had Cleveland -3. I'll be honest, guys. I saw a rookie quarterback, even though he hasn't played like a rookie all season, versus that Browns defense. And I was like, well, this is easy. And it screwed me. I put together a parlay with all of our picks, and this is the game that I got wrong. And that's the reason why. But congratulations to the Houston Texans and Coleridge Bernard Stroud IV putting on an absolute freaking clinic against that Cleveland Browns defense. Also, shout out to Bobby Slowick, who's getting some head coaching nods, getting some head coaching interviews off the work that he's done with Coleridge this year. I don't know what else you can say. Houston's a lot of fun to watch, man. I watched most of that game. Flacco started throwing to the other team, and I was like, okay, this is getting out of hand. But Kyle, how'd you feel on this? You picked it correctly.
Yeah. Last week I even said that I thought Houston was going to win the game. They were at home. They were a higher seed. I think they had a worse record, but Houston's been in the playoffs since week 18. Their game against Indianapolis was pretty much a playoff game.
Yeah.
So they're now 2 weeks down in the playoffs essentially. But essentially what they did is they got ahead of Cleveland, and they forced the Browns to throw the ball, which isn't bad with Joe Flacco, but Flacco's been bad about turning the ball over as well. Cleveland is through the season, they were very high on the turnover scale. And that defense can't continue to bail you out. So I never would have guessed 45-14. Never in a million years would I have guessed 45-14. I was this close to taking an anytime touchdown by the Houston Texans defense against Cleveland. I didn't, unfortunately, but I wish I would have taken a 2-time touchdown from the Houston Texans defense, because they went back to back. Flacco, I think, threw more touchdowns to the defense than he did his own team. Or maybe he tied. I think it was 2-2, but either way, I think Flacco, if he wants to play again next year, I think that he has a shot to play for a few different teams. And I think that Cleveland, made it to the playoffs without their QB1 or their RB1 this season. And as long as they can keep that nucleus together on their defense, they have a shot at being back at least in the playoffs next year.
That's true. It really says something about both head coaches. DeMeco Ryans, to be in the consideration for Coach of the Year for the way he's turned that franchise around in just one season. And then is it Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland? The work he's done with 5 different starting quarterbacks throughout the season, just to even make the playoffs is. I mean, if they hadn't, we would all easily said, well, I mean, they had Chubb hurt, they had all their guys hurt, but they still in that division where you have to win so much. It's really good effort and output. Corey, what did you feel on this one?
I was way off on this one. No, this was strategy. This was all strategy. Every time I bet with the Houston Texans, they've lost. So I had to turn it around, bet against them. They win. That's just how it works. I think the Texans have the coach of the year. I think they have offensive rookie of the year, and I think they have the defensive rookie of the year. This team is just firing on all cylinders. They're way ahead of schedule. And even just from the last time they played Cleveland, I know they didn't have C.J. Stroud, but I think since then they've grown a lot after losing the couple people that they did and stuff. So they're going to Baltimore. It's going to be tough, but I mean, they have a shot. They have a shot. And death taxes, they played on Saturday last week. They're going to play on Saturday this week. So
let me back you up real quick, Corey, because you said that they have the offensive rookie of the year, the defensive rookie of the year. You said coach of the year, but technically we could say the rookie coach of the year and the rookie offensive coordinator of the year too, because I mean, this was Bobby Slowick's first year as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. So, I mean, imagine the Texans who also have, they have Cleveland's first round pick this year still. Well, they traded theirs away to Arizona, which is going to be a later pick than the one that they even have. Yeah. And you're going to have a lot more free agents that look at the Houston Texans and say, I think I want to go play for DeMeco Ryans. So this team, if they can, they could be even better off next year than what they've done this year. And they're still playing right now.
Yeah. And if you remember on draft night, when they traded that pick, everyone was like, what are you doing? Arizona's just locked up the number 1 and number 2 pick for next year. They're gonna be able to build their franchise with the 1st and 2nd overall pick, and then Houston just says, you know what, F them picks. You know, we're gonna do what we're gonna do and put together this squad. And yeah, definitely, Kyle. I mean, if you're a free agent, if you're a defensive tackle or a defensive end, or hell, I guess anybody really, and you see what they're building down there, that's something you want to be a part of for sure.
And no state tax. That matters. That does matter sometimes.
Yeah, it does. That's how our next team gets a lot of free agents. Saturday at 8:15 p.m. on Peacock, the Miami Dolphins traveled to Kansas City, playing in the 4th coldest game in NFL history. They lose this game 26-7. We all picked Kansas City -4 correctly. I wrote that down wrong on Corey's, but we all correctly picked Kansas City -4. I just thought the temperature, the injuries was just way too much for Miami to overcome. And for a second there, it looked like they might have something going when Tyreek Hill scored that little touchdown. And I was like, okay, now we got some action here. But yeah, Kansas City shut that down. I also want to say, why does Patrick Mahomes get handed everything? I watched not only that game, but also another game that we'll talk about later. I watched quarterbacks that slide and get touched and get 15-yard penalties. Yet my quarterback gets absolutely rocked week in and week out and got 0 penalties for the entire year. I know this may just be a dumb Bears fan pissed off at the world, but it really pisses me off. Every week there's usually a flag where you're like, well, I don't know how that's a penalty, or what's the defender supposed to? I played linebacker, so a lot of times I'm like, what the hell is the defender supposed to do in that situation? But for all that to happen week in and week out, and I watch my quarterback get nothing, they don't give a shit, and then they talk about player safety. It just, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way, and I just feel like Patrick Mahomes gets handed a whole lot of stuff. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. He's a damn good quarterback, probably the best one in the NFL, but do you really need to help that guy out even more? I don't know, but congrats to Kansas City. Kyle, what did you feel about this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just to kind of, before we jump into the game, look at Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson, both they're not run first quarterbacks, but they're definitely running quarterbacks. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of refs, not to take any stab at these guys or anything like that, but when these guys start running and they get out of the pocket, I think a lot of these refs look at them as running backs and say, and it's not the way that it should be, because if they're sliding and going down, same for if a running back's going down, like the hit in the Green Bay Bears game, week 18, probably should have been, late hit or roughing the passer, whatever you want to call it, when Justin Fields went down. This one, if game is in Miami and it's in the heat, I don't know that I would have taken Kansas City -4. We said it earlier in the season. I think it was Corey that said it, and he said that this Miami team is not built to travel to the weather, where it's rainy or windy, cold, snowy, and we saw that on Saturday in a game that probably should have been relocated or time change, because there was a lot of people that I read that got frostbite from this and went to the hospital afterwards.
There were idiots out there without shirts on.
Yeah. And I'm having a blanket inside my house watching this game because 68 isn't always warm inside. But yeah, I think that if this is played in a hotter heat, then this is a lot closer of a game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of the weather, before we move on, we haven't talked about Taylor Swift much this year, but I thought that coat that Kyle Juszczyk's wife made for her with Kelsey's jersey on it was really freaking cool. I would hate to see the price for one of those. You're probably talking a couple $100 for a coat, but I thought it was something really cool. And then Taylor and the frosted window that was looked like an album cover, right? But we'll move on. No more about Taylor. Corey, what'd you feel about this game?
Well, I actually did pick Miami +4, despite against everything against my wishes. I actually did pick Miami. That was my first or second loss of my 3.
Oh, I wrote it wrong. My bad.
No. You had it right, but you said you had it wrong, so I changed it. But we're good now.
I'm still not 100% sure that Miami's frauds, but as much as I just shit on Kansas City, and I'm still going to shit on them because I don't think they're that good, I guess Miami is frauds. Or they play in 60-degree weather at the worst, and then they go play in the fourth coldest game. If any game should have been moved, it should have been this one and not the Buffalo one, because the Buffalo one was 20 degrees warmer. This is more dangerous than 4 foot of snow, in my opinion. And
yeah, I thought they were both pretty bad, and we'll get into it when we get to it. But I just
move both or move neither. One, you can't. I thought that was a weird pick and choose them there.
Yeah. But if Miami beats Buffalo week 18, they don't even have to worry about it. They get home field advantage.
Fair enough. And then going back to Mahomes, I can't say shit. The jersey behind me got more calls than anybody. But now I can say shit because he's retired. Mahomes cries so much.
Yeah.
That should have been, first of all, a lost timeout for that change in helmets. And they did not do any of that. And anybody else, Joe Blow, who's like the third string linebacker, if he has to change something or something like that, they will call a timeout immediately.
Yeah,
so that
I had off the field for a play.
But they were driving.
They said it on the commentary team. They were like, well, what's going on here? Why?
because Patrick Mahomes was driving in a playoff game on Peacock, which, by the way, I don't know how your alls went. I have fiber optic in my house. That is the worst thing I have streamed, and I stream a lot of sports. I stream UFCs. I stream all kinds of stuff. Mine was awful, and the picture was not good during a majority of that. And I'm using your stuff, Aaron. I'm using your account. It was just bad at my house for some reason, and I don't know why, but I have heard other people say it was kind of bad.
I didn't have any issues with it. I mean, I hate that for people. Like, I got Peacock when WWE switched over to it because I'm an idiot. I like to watch old wrestling, but that's the only reason why I had it. Like, if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have even watched this game. I'm not going to pay $6 to watch this game, and they're talking about this being the norm, and possibly we'll see a Super Bowl only streaming. Like, how much of our money do you need, NFL? You've already got me to buy YouTube TV. You've already got me to pay for the Sunday ticket because the Bears are never in my area. And now you've got me. I've got Prime Video to watch Thursday games that I usually don't watch all of, and now Peacock for a playoff game. Like,
But that's why, because you just said you got all of it. And they're going to alienate a large group of people, but that large group of people's dying off. So as somebody that I think it's bad that they put a playoff game on Peacock. That's also somebody that's going to help a group of people pay $200 to watch the Super Bowl pay-per-view in 5 years. So, I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of laws, rules, restrictions, and stuff like that around that as well. I don't know that they can get away with moving all of the playoffs and things like that to pay-per-view, essentially, just because there's just so many rules around. There's just a lot of rules around it.
No, I don't know all those rules and laws, but
neither do I. It's just something I read.
I mean, WWE switched all their pay-per-views over to Peacock, but they were already paper. I don't know. Either way, we'll move on to our next game, and my co-host Kyle is very happy about this one. Sunday at 4:30, the Green Bay Packers travel down to Jerry's World, Arlington, Texas, to take on the Dallas Cowboys, and they win this game 48-32. Myself and Kyle correctly picks Green Bay plus 7.5. My co-host Corey, I believe, said I would say Dallas minus 10 or something to that effect. Corey, why were you so sure that the Dallas Cowboys would this time do the right thing? I mean, I got mad at Cowboys fans at work. I was like, y'all had one job, and you couldn't pull it off. But why were you so sure it was going to happen? And then tell me your reaction.
I was so adamant that, having 27 games there this year and just going undefeated at Jerry World and scoring an average of 40 points. And even with that defense kind of petering out a little bit, but still being decent, I thought there was no way. And CeeDee Lamb, I argue, is the best receiver in the league. The way they were playing, I just thought they were unstoppable. And then I watched Green Bay's 3 seasons this year, and I didn't know which team was going to show up away. I totally forgot, and I even think you mentioned it, Kyle. I totally forgot Aaron Jones was healthy and going back home. That was the issue. Totally forgot about that.
Aaron Jones is, he's always been like, as soon as Randall Cobb left, Aaron Jones stepped right in his position to be a Bears killer. And it seems like I said, he was injured for a lot of the year. So he's dealing with fresh legs. This is like week 4 for him. So, watch out for Green Bay in the playoffs. And I told a guy at work, I feel like the Green Bay Packers could pick up a homeless man on the way into the stadium and have him play like a Hall of Famer. It really broke my heart as a Bears fan to watch Jordan Love back in the pocket with the little pitter-patter feet, and it looks so Rodgers-esque where he just keeps falling back and then just throws it up and drops it right in the bucket. And it doesn't matter who's on the other side. He makes household names out of Bo Melton. Romeo Dobbs was the only you had Christian Watson in this game, but I don't recall him making some incredible, oh my God, that's why you draft him that high play. Like, they just spread the ball around. They got themselves a point guard. You got a good coach and a good system in Green Bay that allows you to continue having successful quarterbacks where you allow the guy to learn for 3 years. And then when he steps in, what he hasn't seen, he will see this year. And he's learned a lot. I mean, granted, it's good for you that you had a Hall of Famer in front of him. But, I mean, for them to be able to sit and learn until it's their turn, I just think it's a great system. And I don't know when it'll be broken. But congratulations, Kyle, if you want to wax poetically about your Green Bay Packers here, go right ahead.
Sure, I can spend the next 20 minutes talking about how great they looked. The Packers finished the regular season without a 1,000-yard receiver and without a 1,000-yard rusher. And obviously Aaron Jones was hurt. A.J. Dillon didn't look too great when he was the lead back, but even he was dealing with injuries. Christian Watson's been dealing with injuries. Romeo Dobbs has dealt with injuries. Jaden Reed has dealt with injuries. Dontavion Wicks has dealt with injuries. Bo Melton was called up from the practice squad. Malik Heath is on the IR now. Luke Musgraves had some time on the IR. Tucker Kraft stepped up when he went out. We just have a bunch of young guys that, like you said, Jordan Love's our point guard, and he's playing with no wide receiver one, essentially. All these wide receivers, all these pass catchers, they're just role players, basically.
Yeah.
Nobody was like, oh my God, this guy is a top 10, 15, 20 wide receiver in the league, because they weren't able to take the field all year. This is the first game this season that Green Bay has had their preferred skill players out there. Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Luke Musgrave, and Aaron Jones. And we could even throw Dontavion Wicks out there too, who's also a rookie. But last week I said that the Packers had a chance to win this game. And I said that they needed to win the turnover battle. And they did that. Jordan Love walked out of there with a clean jersey. I mean, Micah Parsons was shut down by a guy that has two names, Zach Tom. They couldn't get pressure on Love, and even when they did, he would scramble out of the pocket. I mean, there was one play where he scrambled out and got behind Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones picked up the block, and then he threw it for a first down or whatever. I mean, Jordan Love is just playing like he's just playing lights out right now, and I hope that it continues against Francisco. But San Francisco's defense is a whole different beast, in my opinion, than what Dallas's defense is. Dallas's defense has dealt with a lot of injuries. They don't even have their number one corner. I mean, Deron Bland, it stepped up, but Deron Bland only became a name because he was returning.
Are you talking about all-pro Deron Bland? That made me so damn mad. Jalen Johnson was second-team all-pro with the season that he had, and behind that guy, just because that guy took a lot of interceptions for touchdowns. That was the only reason why he got all-pro.
Yep.
So cut you off, but that really pissed me. And I loved when they showed, like, I don't know, I'm sure you guys don't see a lot of Bears Twitter, but they went wild with it. They were like, "This is your first team all pro," you know, like compared to our guy. I don't know, but what about defensively? I know you were ready to get rid of Joe Barry. Are you still in that on that train, or has he got it back on the tracks a little bit?
I don't think that this game right here is, in my opinion, it doesn't save Joe Barry his job. I mean, this wasn't necessarily a defensive shutout. They still gave up 500 yards to Dallas. I mean, they were up 20-0. They had a pick six. That's great, but you still gave up a bunch of yards to Dallas, and Dallas still brought it within 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, it was garbage time and everything too, but you still gave up 500 yards to this Dallas team, which Dallas has a really good offense, so you can't take anything away, but there's still a lot that needs to be fixed on that defense. We were able to pressure Dak. We were Jair Alexander could have been called for pass interference, but he had a beautiful interception on Dallas's drive, and Savage had a pick six. I don't remember how many times we sacked Dak. I think 3 or 4.
Which shouldn't happen. I don't know what. I think he had the yips. I don't know why he didn't get rid of the ball those 2 or 3 times when he had more than plenty of time to get rid of it.
You throw a couple of picks, man, you start second guessing yourself.
This was before that one that he went all the way out to almost to the sideline and then just took it. And I will say this real quick too on Jordan Love. I watched that one throw and I watched the replay, and then I watched it again the next day of where he was going backwards and then threw it off his when he was in the air like 3 inches, and I was like, shit.
Yeah,
they got
didn't look like 12 back there,
and I was like, man, they got something here. I've been trying to fight it, and I was like, even after I've been middle of the season when he played like Mac Jones, and I looked at that throw and I was like, God damn, that's a throw. That's a throw right there.
But what I'll tell you, Aaron Jones, not Aaron Jones. If we would have had Aaron Rodgers as our quarterback fully healthy this year with the players in place, we would have been looking at 5 wins with this team. And I'm saying that because of the way that Aaron Rodgers carries himself. These quarterbacks who get paid and have success, you can even see it with Patrick Mahomes now. Patrick Mahomes puts the blame on his wide receivers instead of saying, "Hey, that's my bad." The only one Mahomes doesn't do it with is Kelsey. He'll never. Kelsey can have 10 drops in a game, and Mahomes won't have an outburst on the field. But all these other receivers have a drop, and Patrick Mahomes is losing his shit. Yeah. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers will shrug his shoulders. He'll roll his eyes, and you don't want that. You don't want that from your quarterback. And Rodgers even said, "Get me other people in here. Get me other wide receivers. Get me more weapons." Yeah. And Jordan Love is doing it with nobodies. Not to take anything away from our receiving corps because they're not nobodies, but Nobody's heard of these guys before.
Better
And
receiving according to Patriots.
I only knew
Yeah.
Reed because I'm a draft nerd, but other than that, I mean, Dontavius Wicks, I think he went to West Virginia or something.
Dontavion.
Okay, bro. I've said often, Aaron Rodgers is Jay Cutler with a Super Bowl ring. The way he acts, the way he is as a quote-unquote leader or lack thereof, is Jay Cutler-esque. And now he's going on. I guess his season is over with Pat McAfee, but it just, you guys dodged a bullet getting him out of town. I'll just say that. If he had the platform that he has now in New York and Green Bay, he would have been ran out of town years ago. But kudos to you. Jordan Love seems like a great quarterback. You got it, probably the best coach in the NFC North, and I just I'm very jealous. We'll talk about the other guy right now. Sunday Night Football, the best game of the weekend. Los Angeles Rams travel to Detroit to take on the Lions inside Ford Field. I picked the Rams plus 3.5, as did Corey. Kyle, you picked Detroit minus 3.5. What made you believe in Dan Campbell so much? And tell me how you felt about this one.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit is the better team. The score doesn't really show it, but Detroit at one point was up by two scores. This second half of this game was not anything like the first half. And for me, it's the same pick, the same way I picked the Houston game. Is Detroit was hungrier. I think they wanted this win more than the Rams did. Now I will tell you that the Detroit Lions fans are scum of the earth for booing Matthew Stafford because that man gave you years of his life and would come back into the game with a shoulder popped out of place to lead you to a victory. And for you to boo, like, that's like booing Barry Sanders, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, Matthew Stafford is the best quarterback to ever step on the field for the Detroit Lions. And you're going to boo this man? Like, come on, you have some class. Like, this is your quarterback coming back.
Detroit.
And it's just, I mean, I get it. We booed Brett Favre when he was a Viking, but he was a Viking and he chose to go to Minnesota. Matthew Stafford didn't. I don't think that he really
was traded.
I think he had a no trade clause. He wanted out, sure, but he still gave. I mean, he spent what, 10 to 12 years in Detroit? 9, whatever. I mean, like, he spent a lot of his life. I mean, that's a third of my life. That's a third of his life that he spent in Detroit. And for you to boo this man when he comes out just because he's wearing a different jersey and he's found success with another team, like, come on, have some class. And then if a lot of people are kind of taken to him after the game because he said he was happy for the players with them getting this win in Detroit. And he didn't say he was happy for the fans or anything like that. And it's, one, he's coming off an emotional loss, right? And two, you booed him. You booed the man. Like, come on.
Yeah, they tried to keep fans from being able to wear their Stafford jersey into Ford Field. They booed him. They booed his children. His daughters had these jackets that said Detroit born, LA raised, that looked really cool. But Detroit fans are, I mean, I would say act like you've been there before, but you haven't, so it's hard for, like, when I look at NFC North rivalries, I hate the Packers. I can envy them, but I hate the Packers. But I don't feel that way about the Lions just because the Lions are the Lions. And they won this game, but the Rams were in the red zone. If they didn't kick field goals every time they were in the freaking red zone, they blow Detroit out. I know you said, Kyle, that this didn't look as close as it did, but to me, they score touchdowns in those red zone drives. It's a blowout. It's not even close, and Matthew Stafford's walking off, and all the Lions fans go home crying again. I still don't trust this team. Dan Campbell is a leader. When I watch his post-game speeches and I look at my coach's post-game speeches, it pisses me off because I would run through a brick wall for freaking Dan Campbell, but I couldn't run through a paper mache thing for Matt Eberflus. Right? Good for Detroit for getting the win, but I mean, we'll get into it later. I can't trust them, man. And their defensive coordinators getting head coaching interviews, like their defense is not that good. They got Aiden Hutchinson and C.J. Gardner Johnson. That's
Their
about it.
defense coordinators getting interviews. I didn't know
Yes,
that. I knew
the
their
Tennessee
offensive one was.
Titans has interviewed
Oh boy.
Aaron Glenn for their head coaching job because why not go with another defensive guy when you got a young core on offense?
Well,
Corey,
so
tell me what you think about this one, man.
I'll say this. I'll leave the Stafford stuff for later. I'll say this. The reason they did kick the 3 field goals is because Detroit's defense did a good enough job, which we haven't seen that at all this year, to stop them enough to make a very fourth and go coach kick those field goals. So they did enough to make Sean McVay decide not to go for it. With a shaky kicker at best, because the Rams have had some
They
issues.
kept saying that on the broadcast, but he was nailing everything, man. I guess he was just on
in a dome when you're in the middle of the hashes, maybe it's a different story. But I like Detroit. This was a tale of two halves, obviously. I don't know if some of their players I mean, they're all running through a brick wall for Dan Campbell, so I don't know if someone maybe thought they got the job done already and then they kind of lackluster. I think there was some play calling that reminded me a little bit of UK, Aaron, when we get the big lead and we just kind of sit on it. And there was a lot of that, I think, in this game. I have no problem. I mean, they're playing Buccaneers next. We'll talk about it here in a little bit. As far as the Stafford thing goes, I have no problem with Detroit booing him. It's the same thing as when anybody comes in, anybody else. You know, if he would have came out 20 minutes before like the anthem or something like that, and was shaking hands with like Calvin Johnson and stuff, and he got a big raise then. Once the game starts or once the official lineups come out, they're going to boo him. That's just going to happen.
When Tom Brady returned to New England, how did they receive him? Did they boo him? I'm sure some of them did.
They booed him, yes. Now, when they did, like when he was out on the field and stuff, I think the first time when he ran out, they, cheered him or whatever. But it was a mediocre cheer at best. You still had a bunch of, for every two that was cheering, you had one that was booing. At the end of the day, it's somebody with a different jersey. And I think the true diehard Detroit fans understand and know what Stafford did for that city. And I think the ones that were booing at the girls were just a bunch of like 28-year-olds or something that hadn't been anywhere before and was just being assholes. There's that in every fan base, and I think somebody just maybe caught that part. But I have no problem with what he said at the end of the thing too. I mean, I think he does feel a little salty. I think, yes, he wanted out of Detroit, but I think he was just, he still has a house there. He still has foundations there. He still has all kinds of stuff in Detroit. He's not left Detroit. So I don't really have a problem with the booing, and I don't really have a problem with what he said in the press conference either.
I will say one of the biggest things about Dan Campbell that they talk about building this team through grit. They really showed it on that last drive. They needed a couple of first downs to really salt away the victory and kill the clock, and they did it. I mean, Jared Goff made plays that he had to make. The strikes to Amon-Ra St. Brown, that they did what they had to do. They showed a lot of grit to put this game away. So congratulations to Detroit for doing that, and we'll see how this continues. First playoff win for them in 32 years.
Yep.
So yeah, they definitely, those fans have been through a lot, from watching Barry Sanders retire early to Calvin Johnson call it quits early to watching Matt Stafford leave, and I'm sure they all felt really low at the start of that. And they've built something though in Detroit. For as much shit as I give them and don't hate them as much as the Packers, they have built something. I mean, they won the North. You got to give them that. But we'll move on. A game that was moved to Monday at 4:30 that Corey talked about earlier. The Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to Buffalo. They lose that game 31-17. We all picked Buffalo -10, and honestly, the score looks closer than it should have been. It started getting out of hand early. Excuse me. Snow fall through Buffalo. That's why they moved this game to Monday. And I don't know if you guys saw they showed the live feed of it Sunday during the games, and it was like a freaking snow globe in there. Like you wouldn't have been able to see anything. You wouldn't have been able to watch the football game. And I mean, they were paying fans $20 an hour to come through and shovel the snow out. Like, first and foremost, Buffalo, get a damn dome. What are you doing? You are in the top of the United States with all the snow and all the elements. Put a dome on your stadium. What are you? They bought a stadium across the street and it's open as well. Like, what? Why? Obviously, your whole game had to be moved 2 days later, or the next day, and even then, fans were trekking through the snow to get to their seats. Like, is this not an NFL franchise? Is this some Bush League bull crap? Like, there's no reason to not have a dome in Buffalo. It's ridiculous. But Josh Allen did his thing, lit it up, and Mike Tomlin, congratulations on never having a losing season. He was asked after the game. A reporter said, Mike, you have 1 year left on your contract, and he just walked away. That has become a gift already. I don't know what they do with Mike Tomlin. It's hard to fire a coach that's never had a losing season, but maybe they let him test free agency. I don't know what they're doing in Pittsburgh, but shout out, congratulations, Buffalo. You won your division. You get a home game at home, a playoff game at home, and you take care of business against Pittsburgh. But there's not a whole lot else I can say about it. Kyle, what'd you feel about this game, man?
Like you said, it's closer, really close. The box score is closer than what this game really was. My biggest thing with Pittsburgh, and if they want to get rid, I couldn't understand wanting to get rid of Mike Tomlin. You have 3 different quarterbacks that started a game for this team this year. And the best one was Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph looked the best out of all of them.
That's rough.
You know, what do they do next year? How many of the 3 quarterbacks they have in the building right now are coming back? Next year. I know Kenny Pickett's under contract. I don't think Mason Rudolph is. Mason Rudolph, I think, signed a 1-year deal. I think that's the same thing with Trubisky. I think Trubisky's on his last year of his deal too, right? Because this was the second year that Trubisky's been there. So what's the quarterback situation look like for Pittsburgh next year? Can the Steelers really be the ones to say, hey, Tomlin, we're moving on from you? From my standpoint, I think it's Tomlin that's saying, I don't know if I want to be with this franchise much longer. You know, I had a great however many X amount of years with Big Ben when he was here, and we made it to 2 Super Bowls. We won 1, but you know, I want to see if the grass is greener with another organization. Maybe there's internal struggles or something like that. I don't know. But Tomlin he's coached his ass off for sure. To not have a losing season the whole time he's been there is impressive. It's unheard of. But Buffalo, I mean, Pittsburgh coming in as the 7 seed. I mean, there's only one team in NFL history that's ever won a game as a 7 seed, and that's my beloved Green Bay Packers this weekend. But Pittsburgh really shouldn't have even been in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, Shannon Sharp came out and was talking about championships, and that's like the say is winning championships. I mean, they have 6 Super Bowls, I believe. So that's how they kind of that's what they hold. That's the standard. So that's the only reason why I could see them maybe moving on from Tomlin, but I would take him in a second. I love the way he coaches. I love the way he talks to the media. I love everything about Mike Tomlin. He wins a bunch of ball games. He's continued to do that. What are they going to do? Yeah, you bring up an excellent point, Kyle. What are they doing at quarterback? I mean, does Michael Penix fall to them in the draft? Do they want to draft another guy? Do they want to sign? If Kirk Cousins hits free agency, you place him in Pittsburgh, forget about it. I mean, but we'll have to see what happens with all that. But Corey, what'd you feel about this one, man?
The main thing is you finally see what happens when TJ Watt's not there again.
Mm-hmm.
He's hurt again, and it showed. Their defense did come out in the second half. Now, granted, Buffalo might have been, relaxing as well. But I think, Tomlin, I read something today. I don't think I was ball sacked. I read something today that Tomlin told the Pittsburgh Steelers and the media that he will be back next year to coach. Kind of like telling the Steelers, hey, look, I'm coming back whether you like it or not. So I kind of like that. If he quit or if he left, 29 teams would want him. I think they need to do something at the quarterback. I do believe Kirk Cousins is going to stay in Minnesota, but they need to do something there and maybe package something with Pickens, get him out of there. That is not a Mike Tomlin player, and now that the season's over, I think they try to get rid of him. This is Chase Claypool all over again. And every team that's had Chase
Antonio
Claypool
Brown.
has had – yeah. Well, that was Burfict's fault. That was not A.J. Brown's fault. But I mean, it's just every team that's had Chase Claypool when they drafted him versus when they let him go or when they traded for him and when they let him go, they've had a losing record. This might be some type of trend that has happened with Pickens too. We'll see. But I think he is a cancer in that locker room. And you need to get rid of him. You need to finally get an offensive coordinator that is not Matt Canada, which obviously they fired him. Get somebody, young guy or something that can actually use these wide receivers and Pat Freiermuth and let Najee and Warren cook and just see what happens. I think it was awesome they got in it, but I mean, Buffalo's just a better team.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting what you say about Pickens because I know a lot of Bears fans were very upset that they chose Jaquan Brisker over Pickens in that draft. And I had seen him at Georgia doing this stuff. I mean, he's on an undefeated team and he was blowing up on the sideline. Like, what more do you want, dude? Like, that's just the kind of guy he is. And they'll say, he's got that dog in him or whatever. But I just he's got that diva in him is what it is. And yeah, I think you're right, Corey. You got to get him out of town. He's not good for that locker room, especially a young locker room. If they draft another quarterback and he can't get him the ball, like it's going to be a whole thing. Mike Tomlin can only do so much, when these guys they're making more money than he is usually when they get their extensions anyway. It's hard to tell. That's what Deion Sanders said when they asked him if he'd be a coach in the NFL. He's like, well, you can't talk to those guys because they make more than you do. Like, how are you going to discipline them? But I don't know. That's something we'll have to watch this offseason, see if anything happens. Our final playoff game in the super duper wild card weekend was Monday Night Football. The Philadelphia Eagles traveled down to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers.
How'd I get 2 more points? How'd that work out?
Oh my God. I was not drunk when I did these, I swear.
I'm fixing it for you. I'm fixing it.
I'll take it. Hey.
Either way, it was correct. It was plus. But we all picked Tampa Bay +3. Philadelphia really stumbled into the playoffs. I don't think it's come out whether they're going to stick with their head coach or not. I guess no news is good news for Nick Sirianni, and he's going to stick around in Philadelphia. But I mean, Tampa Baker came to play, and he was out there balling with David Moore and Cade Otton. All of a sudden, looks like a top 3 tight end in the league. I mean, the guy was balling out.
Was that Gronk? Was that Gronk out there?
All right.
It sure looked Gronk-esque. And what I loved, because I've always been a fan of Todd Bowles when he coached with the Jets. I thought he got a raw deal up there. He gets another shot at it in Tampa Bay. And the way he was bringing heat at Jalen Hurts, not giving him any time to make decisions, was the perfect game plan, and it worked out beautifully for Tampa Bay. I mean, I don't want to say they looked like the 0-2 Bucks, but that defense was freaking ferocious the other night, and I loved every minute of it. So congratulations to Tampa Baker and the Buccaneers on an incredible win against Philadelphia, who was favored in this game in their house. Maybe they took a little like, oh, really? This is what we're going to do, So, Kyle, what'd you think about this one, man?
Yeah, I mean, 32-9 is a little bit surprising, but Tampa Bay winning the game to me is not. I mean, like you said, Philadelphia stumbled into the playoffs, and we even talked about it last week. Like I said, Philadelphia stumbled into the playoffs. Tampa, week 18, beat Carolina 9-0. But I said that Carolina had a good defense. Like that's not anything to worry about. Now, do I think that Tampa has their plate full with Detroit next week? I guess we'll find out here in a few minutes when we pick that game. But this isn't surprising. I mean, AJ Brown was ruled out. This team has this team has lost. I mean, yeah, it wasn't good. I wouldn't be surprised if AJ Brown, because I'm pretty sure he scrubbed his Instagram and everything of all of his Eagles stuff, and I think that he may not be the most happy in Philadelphia. I don't know. I guess we'll have to watch this offseason and see what happens. But Philly's window, they were here, and it's about closed, especially once they paid Jalen Hurts. You're going to have a tough time putting that team around that guy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I wonder if the NFL will ever overcorrect that, because these quarterbacks are taking up so much space in the cap room that you're not able to really build an entire team around them. I mean, look what Kansas City did. They fell into a great draft pick in Rashee Rice, and they've got Travis Kelce. But other than that, they have to build a team with a bunch of draft picks. They're probably going to lose to Chris Jones this offseason just because they don't have the money to pay all these players. So I'm wondering if the NFL will start looking at this, owners and guys who really study the cap, and saying, hey, maybe we don't need to pay our quarterback $50 million. Maybe we can pay him half that. I don't know, but I don't know. I'm just saying it's tough to build a team when you pay your quarterback so much, and statistically, it hasn't worked out well for NFL franchises. Corey, what did you think about this game?
Real quick on that, I think what Patrick Mahomes is in his 4th or 5th year of that 10-year, $500 million, I bet that gets restructured to make him a higher paid quarterback, as you say all that. I think that deal is going to be redone really fast. As far as this game goes, I thought the Buccaneers were going to win too. I think I'm actually surprised Sirianni's not out, mainly because of all the names that are available. I know Jeff Lurie likes to keep people around, but when I know Jeff Lurie and Belichick and that crew are friends. And so I'm actually surprised that he's not making that phone call potentially, or even like a Vrabel phone call, actually. I think that the city turned on Sirianni so fast.
Yeah.
That, and then bringing in the Matt Patricia firing. I mean, it was weird. So I'm actually shocked they're not firing, but their team also has some old money on it too. And I don't think they're going to be able to keep this crew together at all. Kyle, you're right. This window was that big, just a Super Bowl ago, it seemed like. And then now it's almost nothing. I kind of feel bad for Jalen Hurts. I don't know if it's because of him or if because that their offense reminds me of somebody that, of all the different formations and stuff on Madden, somebody just keeps that one formation on Madden with the 3 plays, and you know what they're going to do. And I think finally week 9 or 10 or 11, whatever it was, 12, when they were 10-1, I think everybody just finally started figuring that out, that oh wait, they're only running these 3 plays or 4 plays with a couple variations in between. The tush push was stopped 3 times. Tampa did it twice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Tampa, we've kind of quietly talked about Tampa having a good defense, but where their offense was at times so porous, they had to be on the field so much, and that might have been that division, the way it played out. But Tampa, we'll talk about it here in a little bit. Tampa just looks fun. They look fun. Yeah. They do this, and then the next week they do something, they lose to some crappy team by 20 or something. Yeah. So, I mean, who knows?
Yeah. It's any given Sunday in the NFL. I mean, the Houston Texans that we mentioned earlier, they lost to the Panthers this year. Tampa Bay beat the Panthers by 9-0 at the final season.
I beat them twice. Yeah.
I will say Baker looks like old Baker. He looked like he got his swagger back. They said something in the broadcast about him really finding himself when he went to LA, and Sean McVay was just like, dude, I don't need you to be a savior. Just be Baker. Just play like you played in college, man. Play, and even his first few years in the league, really, until he got his shoulder torn up in the Cleveland Browns, he was really up against the wall with his salary and his contract coming to an end, and he wanted to play through it to show them, I'm a tough guy, I can do this, and it really screwed his whole career. That the rest is history. But I feel like he's having a resurgence in Tampa Bay. I'd like to see if they're able to re-sign him, but if they can't, he's going to be one of those guys that goes somewhere that a team that's dang near all the way built feels like they can just plug their quarterback in and go forward from there. My favorite Kelce retired after this game. Jason Kelce, from the Philadelphia Eagles, the center that was always under the pile, that always did the dirty work for the Philadelphia Eagles, retires after this game.
Technically, he on the New Heights podcast, he said that he hasn't officially retired. He said he didn't mean to make that decision in the moment, and it's looking like he's going to retire based off the way that he's kind of been carrying himself. But he kind of backtracked from that retirement talk. I think maybe he wants to save it for kind of a bigger, maybe like, I don't know. I would say he's still out the door, but the way he even acted on the podcast with Travis Kelce, but technically, officially not retiring.
Well, I will say there was I believe it was a Thursday night game where he just happened to be in Chicago, and they had him on in the booth for like a segment, and he did really well in the booth. He's a really smart guy. He knows offenses, knows a lot of the players that are currently playing. Maybe he's got that in his future, or maybe he just says, "Screw it, I want to be with my family for a while." It's these guys are on the road so long, and even in their off season. Like their mom came out and said, I don't really see him in the off season. That's because they're trying to gather as much family time as they can for the 3 months that they're off. And they're really not even off. They have to stay in shape and do all those things. But I mean, if it is the end of his career, I'm glad he went out a Super Bowl champion from a few years ago, and he's got all that going for him. But he's my favorite Kelce. And I was going to say something else, but I can't remember. So it must not be too important. We'll move on to this week's slate of games. Saturday at 4:30, I think this could be the best game of the weekend. The matchup, Houston at Baltimore. Baltimore is 9-point home favorites. The over-under is 44. Money line for Houston is plus 320. For Baltimore is minus 410. And this is really, I mean, it's the young up-and-coming quarterback, the rookie quarterback, Coleridge, Bernard, Stroud, the fourth, versus the quite almost definitely MVP Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. Will weather factor into this? I don't know. Kyle, you got any nuggets for me? Or
I mean, sure, I got nuggets for you. It's just all regular season stuff that doesn't really pertain anymore because these are different teams. I mean, we're in the postseason now, and these teams are different. Lamar Jackson hasn't played a game since week 17. He's had 2 weeks off. So have some of the other players on Baltimore's roster. Houston, like I said, they've been in the playoffs for the past 2 weeks already. They were in the playoffs before the playoffs officially started. So Houston's got that juice going. They've got they've got their blood flowing. And I think that we could see Baltimore come out and struggle on this. Baltimore does have the number 1 rush offense in the league from the regular season. Houston has the number 6 defense against the run. So I think that if Baltimore wants to win this game, they're going to have to do it through the air, and they're going to have to get Flowers involved. And potentially, I think Mark Andrews may be coming back for this game. I don't know if it's officially if he's active for it or not. We'll see. I mean, even that, he hasn't played since week 10 or 11. Yeah. It's been a little while for him too. So I don't know. I mean, if you want me to make my pick first, I definitely can.
Sure.
I'm going to take Houston plus 9. I think that they are hungry. I think that they've been fighting for their life for the past 2 weeks. I think that they looked awesome against Cleveland, and I think that they may catch Baltimore coming out slow.
I agree with you. I think I got Houston plus 9 as well. I think that DeMeco Ryans takes that team up there. When it comes down to coaching, you got one of the longest tenured coaches versus a rookie head coach. And the weather may play a factor, but I think it may play a factor for both of them. And this might be a lower scoring game than a lot of people expect. So for that reason, I feel like Houston covers the 9. I still think Baltimore edges them out. They got a little bit more talent. And even if Mark Andrews isn't ready to come back, Isaiah Likely is a hell of a tight end. It would start for 23 other franchises probably. I think he's a hell of a tight end, but I think Houston covers that 9-point spread. What about you, Corey?
For me, even if Mark Andrews can't go, the Texans don't know that. That's a hell of a decoy, if nothing else, with Isaiah Likely maybe on the other side or something like that. I'm going to end up jinxing the Texans again, but I'm going to take Texans +9. It's not going to be as bad weather. It's going to be a low or high 20, northwesterly 12.5 miles an hour, 30-mile-an-hour gusts, but no precipitation. So it's going to be a little chilly out there.
But it is outdoors, and you got a team coming from Houston.
It is outdoors, yeah. So but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But I really hope Houston can keep this close. It'd be awesome if they won. But I think Baltimore, especially with the week off, they needed rest. And I think they're just too dominant right now.
Yeah. Yeah, they got a hell of a squad this year. Saturday night at 8:15, the Green Bay Packers traveling across the country to take on the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are 9.5-point home favorites. The over-under is 50.5. Money line for Green Bay is +330. For San Fran is -425. I feel like San Francisco has been to Green Bay what Green Bay has been to Dallas. You know, they beat Dallas and then San Francisco beats them. It's just the way it goes. But I do think it's going to be closer than 9.5. I feel like the spread is huge. And I told you guys, I know I'm barely above 500. My plan going into the season was to just finish above 500. And this might bite me in the ass, but I just feel like 9.5 is too big. I think Green Bay covers this 9.5-point spread. What about you, Kyle?
This one is a lot bigger of a dog than Dallas, obviously. I mean, San Francisco blew Dallas out earlier in the season. Saving grace for Green Bay is Christian McCaffrey is nursing a hamstring injury. Now, I think that he's projected to play, but at what percent? Now, when you look at the Dallas offense, you see CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. Yeah, he's a good tight end. Brandon Cooks has played well at times. Michael Gallup completely disappeared, and Kevontae Turpin would pop up every once in a while. Tony Pollard couldn't really get that run game going for the most part for Dallas. But when you look at San Francisco, it's like, damn, you want to stop Ayuk and CMC and Debo? Well, guess what? We're going to throw it to Kittle. You want to stop Kittle? Well, guess what? We're going to throw it to Debo or Ayuk or CMC. Hell, let's get Kyle Juszczyk involved because his wife's making coats for everybody. So it's just they have a lot more talent on both sides of the ball. If Green Bay wants to win this game, it's the same thing that I said last week. You have to win the turnover battle, which is going to be very difficult because San Francisco's leading the league when it comes to the turnover ratio. They're at +13. So you've got to win the turnover battle. You've got to get to the quarterback, and you've got to keep your quarterback clean. Look for Green Bay, if they win the toss, to elect to receive and try to put the points on the board first, like they did on Thanksgiving against Detroit and like they did last weekend against Dallas. They want to get that lead. They want to put the pressure on. It's an uphill battle for Green Bay to win this game, but so was last week. My team doesn't have to win the game for me to get this pick right. By golly, I hope they win the game, but I'm taking Green Bay +9.5. I think they have the ability to keep it close.
What about you, Corey? What you got on this?
It's going to be 53 and raining there. I think Green Bay, they blew their wad last week. I think that was a hell of a performance by them. But I think San Fran, you got CMC. He's had 3 weeks basically to rest. I think Green Bay's only shot is to get to Brock Purdy, and if they can't, I think it's a runaway for San Fran. I think San Fran is the most dominant team in the NFC, period. I don't think they'll get to the over by themselves, but this is definitely going to hit it over, even with rain. But I'm taking San Fran mainly because it's not -10, it's -9.5.
That half a point gets you, huh?
I do remember when Green Bay traveled to Atlanta in 2010 and the Falcons were the number 1 seed, and I think Green Bay won that game 48-24. So who knows?
Cool.
Maybe they do this.
Fun
Maybe
fact.
they do the same thing. Yeah, hey, maybe they do the same thing where they travel to all these different places and beat them all, and then play a third-string quarterback in the NFC Championship.
And you guys traveled to Atlanta the year that Atlanta went to the Super Bowl?
Oh, we got blown out by Atlanta that year. Yeah. It was we couldn't stop Julio that year. Yeah.
Julio. I wonder if he'll retire.
Well, he left Monday
Yeah,
night's
it
game
looked
with
pretty rough. Yeah.
concussion. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was ring chasing, honestly. Like he didn't sign with him till later in the season. So
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on. Sunday at 3:00, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling up to Detroit to take on the Detroit Lions inside of Ford Field. The Detroit Lions are 6-point home favorites. The over/under is 48.5. The money line for Tampa Bay is plus 215. For Detroit is minus 265. I'm going to go first before you guys can talk me out of it. I told you guys I'll probably fall back under 500 this week if this shit doesn't hit, but fuck it. I don't care. I love these underdogs. Give me Tampa Bay plus 6 at Detroit. I just think that defense for Tampa Bay, defense travels. And they don't have to worry about the elements because they're inside of a dome. Did you guys hear the reporter in Tampa asked Todd Bowles about the elements? He was like, "It's gonna be I don't remember what's that."
he said we're gonna spend about 15 seconds outside traveling from the bus to the stadium, but they play in a dome in Detroit.
That was so good. But give me Tampa Bay plus 6. Kyle, what you got?
For me, when I look at these two teams on paper, I mean, Tampa Bay, they're just like Green Bay. They lucked into the playoffs. And here I was taking Green Bay at plus 9.5, but I'm going to obviously go to the other side on this. I just think that Detroit is a lot hungrier still than Tampa Bay is. Last week, Detroit played a team that won the Super Bowl 3 years ago, and then this week they play a team that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Wow.
So they've been there recently. They've been there. How hungry is this team? Because there's still a lot of holdovers from that Super Bowl team that went and won. I think that that Dan Campbell, like you said, he's a leader. Dan Campbell doesn't have to be a great defensive coordinator, great offensive coordinator. If he's leading his team, he's got an offensive and defensive coordinator that are going to coach those sides of the ball. So yeah, give me Detroit minus 6. I think that it depends on what Tampa shows up. Do we get the Tampa that can't put points on the board, or do we get the Tampa that's willing to air it out and fight fire with fire?
That's very true, and maybe Detroit. They might have to cash in on this because they may be with new offensive and defensive coordinators next year. And we saw what happened to Philly when they lost both their coordinators. I mean, they really fell apart. Corey, what do you got on this one, man?
Kind of like the last game. I think Tampa Bay just kind of blew their wad against Philly at home, and I think Detroit. That game was so emotional last week. Now they're kind of can just like not relax, but like it's a different ball game. It's a different team. They still get to go home. Having Tampa Bay come up there, Tampa's so up and down. We've seen it all year. Well, they were up last week. I think they're down this week. I really do think that duo of Montgomery and Gibbs can run on Tampa Bay's defense, as good as Tampa Bay's defense is. So I'm going to take Detroit, loving that it's minus 6 and not minus 7. Taking Detroit minus 6.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. You mentioned the running backs because Philadelphia last week, once they started to get behind, they just completely abandoned the run game, which fed right into Tampa Bay's blitzing, and they just continued to kind of pour it on. I think it's a closer game, which is why I like Tampa plus 6. But we'll move on to our final game of the divisional round. Sunday at 6:30. Thank you, NFL, for putting this at 6:30 because your boy works for a living. So when it kicks off at 6:30, I can watch this game in its entirety before I go to bed. You got Kansas City traveling up to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Bills are minus 3. The over-under's 45.5. Money line for Kansas City is plus 120. For Buffalo is minus 142. I'll go first. I picked Buffalo last week to be in the Super Bowl. I think they continue this run. I think Josh Allen comes out and balls out. I think Patrick Mahomes has a great game. But at the end of the day, I just don't think they have enough weapons to deal with what Buffalo can do, running the ball, playing ball control. And I don't know what the weather is, but it doesn't matter. Give me Buffalo minus 3. What about you, Kyle?
Yep, Buffalo has a lot of injuries on their defense, and that's going to be the biggest thing that scares me. I think when teams play Kansas City nowadays, you're not afraid of their offense anymore. But Kansas City, their defense has shown up this season. They've looked really good, and if
Mike
Buffalo's
Edwards, former Kentucky Wildcat,
if Buffalo's defense, I mean, if they've got a lot of guys ruled out, it's going to be tough for them. I do like that this game is in Buffalo. And I do like that Buffalo has been fighting for their lives since week 8. They know what's at stake. Again, this for Buffalo, I talked about LA and Tampa Bay being one of the last 2 winners of the Super Bowl, one of the last 2 years. Kansas City won it last year. And Buffalo's going up against a team that won a Super Bowl last year, and Buffalo's never won a Super Bowl. In fact, Buffalo's the only team in the NFL history to lose 4 Super Bowls in a row.
Boy, I love losing Super Bowls. That's what Bill stands for.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I never
You never
had no. I mean, Buffalo's got to get to the Super Bowl so they can lose again, right? But I do like just the vibe in Buffalo. I like Josh Allen at quarterback. I think that he treats his offensive players better than Patrick Mahomes does, and I like Buffalo -3 this week.
Well, yeah, I think he does. Stephon Diggs was going through a little thing there, though, where he kind of looked like he wanted out again. I don't know, but what do you got on this one, Corey?
I got a potential 1 to 2 feet starting Thursday. That's going to be there.
Put it down. Get it down.
I do think L'Jarius Sneed will intercept Josh Allen. I do believe that's going to happen. Other than that, I don't think Kansas City's going to do anything really. Pacheco might run a little bit. I think Buffalo is just better. They've been fighting, like Kyle, you said, since week 8. Kansas City has Rashee Rice, and I don't think they have Rashee Rice and they have Pacheco. And Kelsey, it's not Taylor Swift's fault. I think he's just dropping shit lately, and it seems to be happening more and more and more.
There were several catches in that game last week that hit him right directly in the hands, and I mean, maybe it was the cold, but man,
but he's used to playing in that. But I just think Buffalo's just on such a high right now.
Yeah,
that I mean, I'm not even worried about the minus anything on this one. I mean, I'm obviously going to take Buffalo. I think Buffalo can blow them out. I would love to see it, but I think Buffalo. This is Buffalo's. I got Buffalo going to the Super Bowl. So,
Buffalo. You talked about L'Jarius Sneed picking him off. I think our guy Mike Edwards has a better chance of picking him off. The way he just kind of chucks it deep and tries to find somebody.
Man, the way Sneed's been playing lately, dude, there's something about him. Like, because obviously there's Kansas City games on all the damn time, so we have to watch them. And that's the one thing that sticks out to me besides Rashee Rice is L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah, I think, man, there were some plays last week where Rashee Rice was just reaching out and just making those catches away from his body. It was poetry in motion. And
his route running is something it's so beautiful to watch.
Yeah. He may not get himself a Super Bowl this year, but I think they have a star in the making in Kansas City with Rashee Rice. And when they add Darnell Mooney next year, I think he'll fit right in with that wide receiver crew. So they'll have that going for him.
I enjoyed that one.
That's where I think he'll fit. Nagy drafted him and liked him a lot, and I think maybe next week we might have. I mean, we're going to talk about the playoff games, of course, but if we have any coaching news, maybe we'll break that stuff on here as well. As we said earlier, Jim Harbaugh is making his way around the country, interviewing with everybody, and maybe ultimately he goes back to Michigan and takes a big bag, but I doubt it. I think he's ready to come back and try for the Super Bowl again. Go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I don't know if you saw with Jim Harbaugh is that he's been trying to get Michigan to put in his contract that he cannot be let go for any of the sanctions that come to Michigan for basically, anything that they've got coming to him if they bring him back. So if Michigan's not willing to say, yeah, we will keep you no matter what, he's going to the NFL. It just depends on which team wants to bring him in and potentially face that backlash of, hey, you're bringing in this guy who, he won a national championship with, Jim Harbaugh. His new name's Bill Belichick Jr., right?
Okay.
And
first of all, how do you think Pete Carroll got the Seahawk job after all that crap happened at USC and all that stuff?
That's very true.
So,
yeah. I think Pete Carroll is going to be a head coach somewhere next year, and my guess would be potentially the Chargers as well. Jim Harbaugh interviewed with them. He interviewed with Atlanta. Bill Belichick interviewed with Atlanta. I mean, it's just You haven't heard anything on Vrabel. This coaching carousel is it's weird this year. Normally, you can kind of tell who's going to go where, but this year you're just like, damn, like you're waiting for that first chip to fall. And obviously, Gerard Mayo fell last week with no head coaching experience, no offensive or defensive coordinator experience either. And he's the head coach for the Patriots, which is, we'll see how that plays out.
Well, I mean, we have a Patriots fan on the panel. What do you feel about Gerard Mayo taking over the
He's a
head
Texans
coach?
fan.
Well, he's a little bit.
I love Gerard Mayo. I loved him. He was one of my favorite players when he played for us. Obviously, I think there was some talks, earlier in the year about some weird stuff going on in the locker room. And I think that actually had to do more with the fact that Belichick knew this was going to happen and Gerard Mayo sitting there staring him in the face when Belichick brought Gerard back. And then I don't think it had anything to do with the players. So I think Gerard's going to fit with the players. Obviously, I thought Vrabel would have been the pick for me, but it doesn't hurt my feelings that Gerard's the next coach. Even with no coaching experience, being in that system, if I have to get somebody from the system, it was going to be Gerard or Mike Vrabel. So I'm fine with it.
You didn't want them to go in a different direction? I mean, Belichick was a defensive guy. They stick status quo kind of.
No, I'm fine with having the defensive coach because I've seen what we've done on offense in years past. Granted, most of it was Brady, but Brady didn't have the most help. So if we can get a really, really good offensive coordinator in there, that's different now, that is actually out of the tree, so to speak. I think that would do huge for us, and finally get some of these wide receivers and tight ends off the books. Somehow the Patriots still lead in cap in tight ends and wide receivers. And if you're not a Pats fan, you could probably name only 3 of them. So I can't name all of them. And we're still the most expensive team in tight ends and wide receivers.
I just saw a mock draft where you guys grabbed Marvin Harrison Jr. So maybe y'all got the 3rd pick. If you miss out on both the top quarterbacks, maybe that's a potential fit with Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, he steps right into a number 1 spot there. Juju might not like it, but
Juju can go to hell. As far as I'm concerned, real quick on Michigan, they'd be insane to not sign that contract if Harbaugh wants that. They just got the first championship since they split one with Miami or whatever it was. Really so like if that's on the Wolverines, they don't do that. That's their own fault. But going back real quick, I think we need to get some people out of this tree somewhere. If it's a Ben Campbell coming in or Ben Johnson coming in or somebody, spend money, Kraft can spend money on coaches. Get some new stuff in there that Gerard Mayo that can help him. D'Amico Ryans-esque. I think he has the potential, like a D'Amico Ryans, to build up this franchise.
I think if Ben Johnson leaves, it's for a head coaching gig, though.
I agree too.
That was one of my biggest issues with the Bears sticking with Eberflus is that you're missing out on some of these offensive minds. Bobby Sloak's not going to take a lateral move anywhere. That was a guy that I loved. I know he only had 1 year calling plays, but I just really liked the work that he did with C.J. Stroud, and he comes from the tree that I love, which is I'm on the Clint Kubiak train now. I really like the idea of bringing him in from San Francisco and bringing that offense to Chicago, regardless of who's under center. That offense has worked since Daddy Shanahan ran it. You know what I mean? And Gary Kubiak was right there with him. So this is just bring him on over and let him change things. But I mean, we've heard a lot of news of where guys are interviewing and stuff, and hopefully by next week we'll know maybe someone will get hired. I mean, someone's got to get hired eventually, right? Usually something happens by now. I don't know, but we'll get into that more next week. But until then, like, comment, subscribe. Follow Daily Football Roundup on YouTube and hit the little bell to tell you when we go live. But we do go live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. You can find that on the YouTube channel for DFR. You can find that on the Facebook page for Daily Football Roundup. You can find it on my Twitter account at Aaron Current. Do all the things. Leave us reviews. We are on Spotify and iHeartRadio app the next day. If you listen via podcast, leave us a review. We appreciate it. But until next week, Corey, if you just want to tell them.
Bye.